Mutant Deviations, Wormo, complete. By Slider 214. And thanks again to my beta Grey Raven 09 for his assistance. Disclaimer, I do not own anything related to Worm. If I did, I would be far more productive. Please enjoy and let me know what you think in a review if you feel like it. Interlude, 1.x. Sarah Pelham. Sarah closed the door to her house and rested her back against it for a moment, trying to collect her thoughts and force her stomach back down. It didn't help at all. This entire situation was so far beyond screwed up that there was almost no recovering from it. Hopefully Crystal had done as she'd asked when she and Amy ran from the house originally, so that she didn't have to do this twice or thrice in one night. Swallowing the last of the rising bile, she pushed off from the door and strode into the living room. Good. The entire family was there. Crystal was on the couch with Neil and Eric, while Carol, Mark, and Victoria were sitting on the armchairs. She took her place at the center chair and crossed her arms as she sat. Victoria, give me one good reason why we don't go directly to the PRT and the Protectorate. From what I'm given to understand, you can't seem to control yourself, and tonight certainly warrants it. Sarah. Just what are you accusing my daughter of now? Carol yelled. It's bad enough we have to be woken up to fly over here at 2 in the fucking morning, now you're saying Vicky has done something wrong? I hope you have proof. This isn't a trial, Carol, and you should be thanking your lucky stars it isn't. If it was, she'd probably be up for attempted manslaughter by use of a para-human ability. Sarah's declaration was like a bombshell, and all potential whispering in the room stopped at that as the family's eyes rotated between Sarah and Victoria. It's true, Victoria murmured. I was just so mad and I didn't think, everyone has a brute rating of at least 1 these days in this city, I figured she could take one punch, I didn't mean to hurt her that bad. Crystal raised her hand and shook her head. This should wait until Amy gets back. Amy is not coming back. What? What do you mean Amy isn't coming back, Mom? Did I fucking stutter? Amy isn't coming back. Are you happy, Carol? You've finally driven her away, for good this time. I knew you had issues, but I thought we agreed you would come to me if it got this bad. Carol scowled and glared at Sarah, who just continued to stare right back at her sister. Finally, Carol huffed and turned to the side. We don't need her. We never should have taken her in. She's your daughter. She was never my daughter. She's the misbegotten spawn of a monster, and she was going to become a monster herself. Now that she is free of us, you just watch, she is going to show her true self any day now, and you'll see I was right to hate her, Carol sneered. Mark and Victoria both stared open-mouthed at the woman. Mark for his part wiped a hand down his face and leaned back in his chair. And people say I need therapy. Carol, either you see someone starting tomorrow or I'm taking Victoria and we're leaving. You can't do that. They'll never give you custody with your condition. Mark just smiled back at her. Probably not, but I'd love to see how you keep custody when it's made aware how much you despise your other daughter, the miracle-working panacea of all people. I think I have a good chance, hun. I think it was my fault anyway, Victoria said, wrapping her arms around her knees and pressing back into her chair. That's what she said, wasn't it, Aunt Sarah? That she needed to stay away from me because she... Sarah groaned and held her head in her hands. She'd tried to forget about that little tidbit, though of course it wouldn't go away. That's not entirely your fault, Vicky. Though it is another thing we badly need to talk about. Can you control your aura? Truly control it? Maybe? Yes? I think so. I don't really know. I've never tried to fully suppress it. There wasn't ever a point. Dad needed cheering up, Mom is a bit of bitch so it couldn't hurt, Amy was supposed to be immune, so I always left it on at home. At school, Dean is there to counteract it, and when he isn't it's just a few minutes for each person, so I didn't really care enough to pull it in. I've been holding it inside since Amy said something and I think I can keep doing it, but I have to concentrate on it. I might get used to it enough to just flip it off and on like a setting, but I just don't know. Sarah nodded. Well, that'll do for now I suppose. Though we still haven't answered the other question, Vicky. Give me one reason why we don't take this to the PRT. Because they'd send me to the birdcage, the blonde replied in a quiet, defeated voice. That brought Sarah up short as bedlam broke out in her living room. Vicky, what did you do? Vicky? Girl, seriously? What the hell happened? Not another word, Victoria. Not another word. Vicky, are you all right? Vicky. Sarah? Some explanations would be appreciated. While her family argued, Sarah just frowned and held her head. Her niece was right. If things had escalated this far, they probably would send her to the birdcage. If Amy had stepped forward earlier, then things would be different, but now, it was too much, too far. If one person started to talk, then all of them would. A whole cascade would follow, and any hope of clemency or just a short stay in juvie would go out the window. This was so far past the 3 strikes prerogative, god damn it. Everyone, quiet. She waited for the muttering to die down as she stood and turned to Victoria. You're absolutely certain no one died because you couldn't control yourself? Victoria nodded, still refusing to move her eyes from the floor. I didn't know it was that many people though. I didn't, Aunt Sarah, I swear. I thought it was just a few. I never kept count. I thought that Amy would say something if I ever was going too far. It certainly sounds like she tried. And that I just didn't want to listen, I know. Victoria buried her head in her knees. She's never going to forgive me, is she? And now she probably thinks that I hate her because of how I left and what I said. We can deal with that later, Sarah said. She hadn't meant for it to come out that harshly, but once it was out there was no taking it back. Carol, what would be the penalty for 36 uses of a para-human power that would necessitate healing by Amy to survive? Victoria supplied. Carol paled. My firm just defended a girl being sent to the birdcage for unintentionally using her power to maim her ex-boyfriend. All evidence showed she had no idea she was forcing him to do something, but the courts didn't want to hear it and I didn't feel like trying it because the girl did nothing beneficial with her powers except sing. I gave it to a less experienced lawyer. Granted, he didn't do the best on the case, but he didn't have much to work with. She was going to go no matter what. That was one use. Victoria, tell me this is not right. It's right, Mom. And that monster you were talking about? Your daughter. She's the one who kept me from getting in trouble for it before now. She's the one who kept me from being brought up for killing a girl, a new hero, tonight. Oh God, I could have killed Hive too. Did you see how little there was left of her before Amy fixed Queen? Oh God, I'm the monster, I'm the fucking monster. The rest of Victoria's statement dissolved away into nothing as she descended into sobs. Crystal rose from her spot on the couch and went to hug her cousin, as did Mark. Sarah fell back into her chair, shaking her head. All right, that settles it. We can't call the PRT despite however much it warrants it. God damn it, Vicky. Okay, here's what we're going to do, ball is in their court. If Queen and Hive want to press charges, we won't deny it, but we won't start things first, as I'm not going to be the one to send my niece to the birdcage. On the other hand, Vicky, you are barred from patrols, from any missions unless I personally give you the go-ahead. I'm calling in Yamada, she owes me one. She'll set up appointments for both you and Carol. Mark, if you want in, feel free. I highly recommend it, but I can't force you. In the meantime, it's getting light out and I need to go brief the director on how Panacea is no longer with New Wave and that we're unsure whether she will be continuing her healing trends. Any questions? Good. Get some sleep, all of you. I need to get ready to talk with Pigott. The living room again blew up in conversation and argument as Sarah stalked back out of the house and took to the air. It was times like this that she envied Mike. At least he had been able to walk away after Fleur. At least he had found some sort of peace. Madison. The tiny black-haired girl stretched as she shut down her computer. She squinted at the time and muttered, "Ugh, 3 a.m.? I really need to get back to a normal sleep cycle." "Sleep is overrated," a chuckle sounded from behind her. Madison squeaked and spun her chair around, grabbing for something to defend herself from the intruder. She managed to grab her coffee cup and chuck it in the general direction of the center of her room while her chair continued to spin, only to hear it impact against one of her stuffed animals in the corner. "Wow, that's actually not bad aim, Madison. Nice shot. Too bad I'm not actually inside the room though." She threw herself off of the chair and peeked over her bed. Her mouth fell open as she saw a small cluster of bugs in the center of her room. They formed into a small hand and waved at her. "Oh my gosh! Your hive." "Yeah, more or less. Can you open the window? This is going to take forever if we talk like this and I have more friends outside." "Sure, give me a second," Madison said, quickly scrambling over her bed and levering her window wide open from the small crack it'd been a moment ago. Looking into the alley below, she saw Hive's main body as well as two other girls. All three waved up at her. "Hey," the tall one in the middle said, saluting her, "do you want to come down or do you want us to come up? Depends how good sleepers your family is, I guess." The way she talked sounded familiar, but Madison put it out of her mind for the moment. She could worry about that later. Looking back to her bedroom door, she frowned and shook her head. "I'll come down to you. We can talk in the woods just past my backyard. Give me a moment to get down." She turned around, levered herself out of the window, reaching below for the foothold of the garage roof just off to the side. "You can do this, Madison, you can do this. Be strong. Be strong like you wanted to be." She felt her foot catch on the garage and slowly put her weight on it. Dropping onto the garage proper, she smiled for an instant, before gravity took hold and she was falling backwards off of the garage and into the alley, her arms pinwheeling and a soft scream issuing forth. She barely had time to even realize she was falling before she was caught by the tall, armored girl, both of them nearly falling to the pavement as the girl sagged under her. "Damn, you really are light," the girl muttered. "All right, get up, I'm not carrying you the whole way, Madison." Madison frowned as she shakily stood and turned to look at the grey-clad hero standing near Hive, and was that Panacea in civilian clothes? Holy cow! What the hell had she wandered into? Do I know you?" "Yeah, actually, you do. But we'll get to that when we're undercover." "You said the woods." "Why yes, this way," Madison said, waving the trio forward. As she hurried to her little spot in the woods, she racked her brain trying to find who would fit this mystery hero. No one immediately came to mind. The only one close was one of her online friends, but none of them seemed to fit quite right. Cowboy maybe, but she was nearly certain that was Greg Vitter, and the day Greg showed up on her door in drag was the day she gave up everything. Trying to help people to make up for her old mistakes was one thing. Trying to help Greg was entirely different. Besides, he'd called her a pervert. The four of them settled into her little clearing and Madison looked around. Before anyone could speak though, Hive smiled. "Did you get my message?" Madison nodded back, a grin forming. "I did. I've been looking up some places you might like to use. I have a list back in my room. Some are old warehouses that aren't being used. Others are places on the docks that haven't seen a tenant in ages, though you might want to be careful about those." I had to run a few by one of my contacts and she said that some merchants might be holed up in some. There's a factory location that my dad used for shipping a few months back before the trade dried up. There's not really a plan to either bring production online or sell it off though, so right now, it's just vacant. Something about a tax write-off. I think that's probably your best bet. It's set up for electricity from the grid too, and as long as the draw isn't too extensive my dad shouldn't notice anything. Even if it is, I can probably route most of the funds notice away from him with a bit of minor hacking. I'm already in his main system thanks to family passcodes anyway. Endbringers have done something right, I guess. The tall girl looked between the other two, both of whom shrugged. Okay, I think that would probably be acceptable. However, before we move forward, there's something that you need to know, Madison. Considering that you are going to know the location of the base, you should probably know who you are sheltering. It's going to come up eventually and I'd prefer to handle this now so that we know if it's going to be a problem or not. Why would it be a problem? She asked, frowning. Just who was this girl and why did she sound so familiar? Because, the girl reached up and pulled off her helmet and Madison's world stopped. I'm Taylor A. Bear. Your last victim. Hello, Madison. How does it feel to be responsible for creating your own hero? Taylor smiled at her. There was nothing that could be mistaken for kindness in that smirk or in those eyes. Yet, it didn't matter. Because Taylor A. Bear was alive. She was alive. Madison hadn't been party to a murder. She hadn't, before her mind caught up with her body, she was flinging her arms around Taylor and sobbing into the taller brunette's armored chest. I thought I'd killed you. They didn't tell me what they were going to do, and then when I found out they said you were already out. And then I found out you were in there for hours. And then you were in a coma. I thought I killed you because I couldn't stand up to Sophia. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She felt an awkward pat on her head and heard a mumble to the side that didn't process through the sobs. The only important thing was Taylor and how very much not dead she was. Okay, I was, not expected that. I admit I was kind of hoping for a breakdown, but this is not quite the direction I was hoping it would go. So, how much of when you bullying me was intentional then and how much was the psycho bitch? At the beginning too much was me joining in with the popular girls to keep them from focusing on the cute nerd who was good with a computer, Madison hiccuped, sniffling as the words flowed out. I'm tiny, I'm cute, and I'm a nerd, and Sophia is a horrible, horrible jock. All it would have taken was her to see me with my equipment one day and that would have been it for me. I thought that if I got in with Emma she would make Sophia leave me alone. I tried to just take your homework. Everyone knows that the teachers don't care about it anyway. I figured they'd move on in 2 or 3 weeks. Jocks always get bored fast. But they didn't. And everything I tried to make Emma shift her focus just narrowed her sight on you. Then I tried to get you to stay home, but you kept coming. I didn't know how to get out. I tried leaving notes for the principal, but the bitch didn't do anything. I tried talking to the principal after they pushed you down the stairs, but she still didn't do anything. After they locked you in the locker I just gave up. I thought they killed you and I thought I was responsible because I hadn't fought harder. I thought I had killed someone because I was too scared to be the victim too. I stopped going to school, I stopped going out, I stopped doing anything that wasn't online. I can find you whatever you want, Taylor. Tell me how to make this right and I'll do it. If you want me to finish things I'll do that too. God knows, I deserve it. She pulled back and wiped her nose on her arms, averting her eyes from the girl that had been a target for so long. She couldn't meet her gaze. She didn't deserve to meet her gaze. There was quiet for too long to count and Madison was just waiting for the noose to fall around her neck like it always did. She hadn't been strong enough to fight off Emma or Sophia and this was what she deserved. The silence was eventually broken by the other girl murmuring, Taylor. Yeah, I know, Taylor huffed. You're making it very hard to enjoy this, Madison. You're supposed to be evil and horrible, and I was planning to use Hive as a form of karmic retribution or something. Like haha, look, your little victim has fangs and those fangs are what you admire so much. How do you like that? But this is just sad. Sophia beat you down almost as much as she did me and she didn't even realize it. Damn it. Alright, fine, you're not forgiven, but we can move forward with a fresh slate. How about that? Is that okay? I'd like a fresh slate, Madison said soft enough she wasn't sure the others could hear her. That was when the rest of what Taylor had said caught up to her. Her head jerked up and she stared between the bug girl and her high school associate. Wait, what do you mean about Hive? Taylor gestured between herself and the cluster of bugs, the bugs doing the same and smiling. I'm Hive. Hive is me. I think. We were. Until a few hours ago that's what it was at least, now, it's more, divided. Amy, I think something knocked my control loose. Or maybe I pushed too much of myself at the swarm just before your sister knocked me out. I can still feel the bugs, but the ones under Hive's control just do their own thing if I don't take direct control. The other girl, Amy, frowned and fidgeted from side to side. I'm not sure, does it matter right now? She seemed nervous enough that Madison lifted her head up, eyes narrowing, trying to focus in on the conversation. Of course it matters, it's my powers being weird. Normally I control the management bugs and those broadcast my orders to the others. Everything mostly moves in a group, and, so long as I stay away from my upper limit of direct control, I don't get a piercing headache. This seems to be working way differently. Hive's bugs are all directly controlled, but don't seem to count towards my limit. Something weird is happening, Amy. Hive was supposed to be simple, it was supposed to keep me out of the line of fire while I got a team together. Now I'm worried I broke my powers. What if it runs off on its own? What if the rest of the swarm can start to do that? Amy hunched over and shook her head. Taylor, can we please talk about this later? I think I know what happened, but I can't discuss it right now. Hive is fine, your powers are fine, the rest of your bugs aren't going to do anything you don't tell them to do. Unless I tell them to do something, I don't plan on doing that though. 3 sets of eyes looked at the collection of bugs that was grouped up into, roughly, the shape of a person. Hive held up its hands and its mouth smirked. Sorry, couldn't resist. Carry on. This is weird. Madison said, frowning, looking back at Taylor as she rubbed at her head. Tell me about it, Taylor said, shuddering. Will you just go away? We don't need you at the moment, I'll pull you together later if that changes. Whatever you say, see you next time you need me, Hive said, waving as the swarm dispersed into a small cloud of roaches, bees, and spiders an instant later. Taylor's posture slumped over as the swarm vanished into the bushes, though she perked up a bit as Amy reached over to massage her neck. Amy, however, paled at the touch and froze almost immediately. Taylor noticed that Amy had stopped moving her fingers and turned to look at Amy, gesturing with her hand towards the center of the small trio. I definitely know what it is. I fucked up when I healed you. Can we leave it at that for now? Please? I'll tell you, but not when there's an audience. She turned to glare at Madison. Madison just nodded and finally moved to shift further away from Taylor. Oh, right. Sorry. I didn't mean to get in the middle of anything, I just wanted to, you know. This is overwhelming. Can I ask a quick question? Madison frowned, looking again between Taylor and where Hive had been. While the 2 capes thing does sound like a good plan to avoid being hurt, don't you risk losing a lot of bugs all at once that way? That was why I decided to go out myself too, Taylor sighed. Get more bugs while also shoring Hive up in the process. Mostly act as the healer, maybe long-range attacker with just a few small clusters. It was working pretty well tonight, until Glory Girl punched my chest in. She wrapped her arms around her stomach and grimaced. Okay, that makes sense I guess. So Madison commented, wringing her hands and steadfastly not commenting on the latter half of that statement. Did you both still need that operations base? I could tell you the address for the factory if you are interested. A little color returned to Amy's cheeks and the ghost of a smile spread over her face. Does it have a bed? If it does, we are definitely interested. I think there's a pull-out couch there still. Amy and Taylor just smiled. For the first time in months, Madison felt like she was actually doing something right for once. Emily Piggott. Some days it just wasn't worth waking up. This was shaping up to be one of those days for Emily Piggott, though to be fair, it had been one of those days almost constantly since Costa Brown had made her director of this horrible shithole of a city. She closed the report on her desk and did her best not to scowl. The room full of capes did very little to help that urge. Will someone please explain to me just how Shadow Stalker has managed to slip her leash so far? Please? Because for the life of me, all I see when I read this report is that the little bitch should have been executed months ago. I'm not even talking about by us, I mean by the goddamn Empire. She's flaunting this shit as a black girl against a white girl in a school with Empire grunts running around. Has she tried to murder the idiots that they've sent after her too? Well? Where's that report? Arms Master shifted from side to side in his chair before ultimately leaning forward and holding his hands in front of him. Ma'am, we believe that she used the backing of the other girl, Emma Barnes, and the fact that Barnes' father is a lawyer to avoid having the Empire come after her. He's a divorce lawyer. That is not very widely known. Emily snarled and threw the paperwork into the center of the table. Aegis. The ward in question flinched and sat up straighter. Is this in character for her? Yes, ma'am. She's a loose cannon. Always has been. It's really hard to even make sure that she sticks with her partner for her whole patrol. Sometimes we don't even bother because it was. Stop talking. You are no longer team leader, Gallant is. Actually, no, he should have picked up on this too considering his power. Clock Blocker is team lead. Emily had to take several deep breaths in order to get her anger back under control. She should have been aware of this long ago. I want Shadow Stalker in custody before the hour is out. I want her interrogated, I want all of her personal property searched. Both civilian and cape. This is no longer just a civilian issue. What the little shit did was nothing short of attempted murder, and if she has been that way in her civilian life, I shudder to think what she was doing as a cape. While on unsupervised patrols. Yes, ma'am, echoed several voices from all around the table. What do we know about the A-Bear girl? Has she pressed charges? Miss Militia took over from there and shook her head. She has not. Actually, once Panacea healed her at the hospital. Christ, it required Panacea's intervention. Emily interrupted. I missed that part. This just gets worse and worse. Go on. As I was saying, once she was healed and left the hospital, it's like she just vanished. She stopped attending school almost entirely. The days she's been back since the incident can be counted on a single hand with fingers left over. Home life. Single-parent household. Mother died several years back, and by all accounts her father basically ignores her and is focused solely on his work. Emily's scowl was firmly back in place. If that's not the recipe for a trigger event, I don't know what is. I agree, and considering how Hive pointed us directly at this, I would tend to say that she is Hive. Assault leaned forward at that. Wait, I thought that Hive was a case 53. Do you think the A-Bear girl is the bug girl, or is controlling the bugs like a projection and just faking it? Miss Militia shrugged. It could really be either, though I would tend to say the latter. I checked and she was at school while I had my meeting. That was one of those vanishingly few days of attendance. Rather strange coincidence, wouldn't you think? Assault leaned back and whistled. That's some impressive range if she's remote controlling the swarm from that far. That's what, 9, 10 blocks. 11 actually. Emily shook her head. Mark a bear down as a master 7, changer 1, just to be safe. Someone reach out to Panacea to see if the girl was cape when she was healed. That might help to put this to bed. If not, leave her filled in as Hive until told otherwise. Now what's this about a queen? Hive recruited her last night supposedly, battery supplied. She hit a button on a remote and a small projection of the swarm girl along with a cape in a grey bodysuit with a vaguely insectoid mask and small wings on the back running along the street towards ABB Terrority. She is bug-themed as well. Most of the reports are just rumors at the moment, though we did get something from a girl who claims to have been saved by the duo about an hour ago. This girl said that Queen controlled small clusters of insects and seemed to be more acting as a lookout while Hive handled most of the combat. Emily narrowed her eyes at the screen and shook her head slowly. Clever girl. Tactical. She doesn't have a team, so she's keeping herself out of danger by leveraging our misunderstanding against us. Keeps her real self out of the fight using her range, while her proxy fights the close-in personnel. Up her master rating to an 8. If she has that much control to run two things at once, she has a lot of potential to be dangerous. Militia, are you certain she won't be joining the wards? Miss Militia sighed and hung her head. She pointed at the files that Pigott had tossed into the center of the table. I get the strong feeling that she knew that Shadow Stalker was a ward. I feel that she may have accidentally figured it out through her power during one of the days that she was back at school following the incident. She was attending for several days in a row and then, with apparently zero provocation, she just stopped. If Shadow Stalker used her power on the grounds in an attempt to get at a bear when she thought she was unseen and the girl had eyes on her in an attempt to prevent further attacks. Perfect. If she can see through her goddamned swarm when it's not person-shaped, then we need to pin a thinker rating on her too. Make it a 3, Emily groaned. Arms Master jotted a note and nodded. Going back to the previous comment, if she knew that her tormentor was with the wards or even just a cape in general, she probably suspected the school was sheltering her. Which it was, Emily spat. I'd have fucking Blackwell's head on a pike if I could. We do not need this type of publicity. If she thought that, then she might have thought the entire organization was sheltering her. It's a wonder we don't have a new villain blanketing the entire school in poisonous spiders. Battery nodded. All the more reason to try again with this girl. She obviously has a good heart. We have a chance here. Let's show her that the PRT and the Protectorate can do some good. That we can fix our messes. Emily shook her head slowly. If I was a bear, I wouldn't trust us at all. She's isolated and has built an entire second cape persona to hide how alone she is. Approach her with caution. Keep trying to get her to come in. Don't escalate. We don't know the upper bounds of her range and at the moment she's playing nice. Let's not change that. She set her hands onto the tabletop and looked at everyone around the table. Now, are there any other fires I need to address? Canary is in the holding tank at the rig, Arms Master said. She should be moved to the birdcage in about 2 weeks. We're currently just waiting to see if there are going to be any others on the transport with her, but without any recent captures, I doubt it. I apologize for missing Lung the other day, ma'am. That would have been a big win for the city. Emily sighed but waved it off. It would have been. You can't really expect to subdue that monster when he's already ramped up like that though. I'm honestly just happy that the fight didn't end up killing anyone. He did injure 2 of the Undersiders before they ran off in the confusion, Arms Master said frowning. Yes, but they weren't killed, so mission success. Anything else? Assault held up a hand, his phone in his other hand. Director? Photon Mom is on her way up. I think we need to hear what she has to say. Emily's scowl returned. She was going to need dialysis after this meeting, she just knew it. Let her in. The words were barely out of her mouth before Sarah Pelham, half in her Lady Photon costume, half in civilian clothes, walked through the doors and dropped bonelessly into the nearest chair. Everything Emily had been about to say dropped out of her mind, seeing the expression on the other woman's face. The doors shut and thankfully, Miss Militia took the lead. Sarah? Are you all right? Did someone die? Amy's gone. She's not with New Wave anymore. The room went utterly silent at the despairing declaration. I did everything I could, but it was too little, too late. She was hurting so much, and I didn't even notice until it was too late. Sarah leaned forward and held her head up in her hands. I can't give details. It's private. I can tell you she's safe for the moment. She's not with villains. She's with two new capes, Hive and Queen, I think. Amy seemed to know one of them at least. I think they had met before. I think they were friends. I can't, she'll call if she needs help. I don't know if she's still going to heal. She has her phone. You'll have to call her directly to check with her if you have people who are hurt. I don't know. Emily nodded. Thank you for telling us, Sarah. If you need a bed to sleep for a few hours, it'll be made available to you. Sarah just nodded and let Battery lead her out of the room. As the doors shut again, Emily looked over the rest of her staff. All right, what in the fucking hell happened last night? Thanks for watching.